All the genderqueer people who still use the women's bathroom who look like men, look at, I know it's painful, like y'all just like waiting to piss and you just run up in there because you don't want nobody to see you and be like, there's a guy in there, and all of that thing. But this is what I'm saying, all you genderqueer people who still use the women's bathroom, be revolutionary about that shit. Run up in there, stand in the middle of the fucking bathroom and be like, oh my God, I have to pee so bad. Man, I stopped using the ladies' bathroom long time ago. And the last time I used the ladies' bathroom was like over a decade ago. And I walked in and it was the Denny's women ladies' room. And then this woman was coming out and she was like, ladies only.
Usually that happens all the time, right? Like that's like a no-brainer. They'll look at the door and come in and do their business, not bother me. This woman actually came up to me as I'm washing my hands and, softly said to me, like kind of like touched my arm and said, you've made a mistake. This is a women's restroom. And I look at her and I said, do you not know that I know this is a women's restroom? And I'm speaking English, right? And she's startled and she doesn't say anything else, and then she quickly goes into the women's stall. And I said, I was like, of course I know this is a women's restroom. And in my mind, I thought, I know why she did that. She wanted to be a good Samaritan and help me, because she thought I was, Asian, male, and a foreigner. Didn't speak English and came into this restroom by accident. So she is misperceiving me racially, gendered, and assuming that I'm a foreigner and assuming I don't speak English. And at that point, I'm like, how do I unwrap myself around this? Like, is she being racist? Is she being sexist? Is she being heterosexist? Is she just being dumb? Like, all of those things are happening, right then and there. And I'm like, oh my God, this is a perfect example that how people are perceiving me in so many different ways that I'm not even able to untangle it, because it's not just one thing.
Once I was at Six Flags with a group of people, and I had to go to the bathroom. Like, it was a dire situation. I mean, it wasn't dire, but I had to go to the bathroom and I couldn't avoid it because we weren't leaving. And so I was like, I'm going to the women's restroom. And this is pre-testosterone or anything. And I went to the women's restroom and this woman was like, this is a women's restroom. That kind of like, are you an idiot? And she was so hostile to me that I was just like, I had to get a little out of pocket. And I was like, I have a vagina. What is this space about? Who's allowed? Because I have some vague understanding that because I have a vagina, I'm supposed to go to the bathroom here. But if this is not the correct assumption, please direct me to that bathroom where it's appropriate for me to pee. I mean, for the love of God, I just want to pee.
I was using the women's bathroom, which, when I do workshops, I talk about bathroom issues, and I say, I choose to use the women's bathroom. I actually prefer to use a single stall, gender neutral, or family bathroom, if there is one. One incident I went through was just a simple, many people have gone through this, a simple incident of going to the bathroom. I was like, great, nobody's in here, cool. I can just go about my business and leave. And so I did, and I left, and this older white woman looked at me, looked at the door and said, are you a man? And I laughed. I laughed because I didn't know what to say. I knew it was going to be one of those moments where I look back and think of all the things I could have said that would have been very, very clever and very empowering for me, to say she might not have said the same thing if I were a young white man, if I was perceived as a young white man, or even if I was perceived as a young black man. Like, who knows how she would have acted. But I feel like she felt the entitlement to talk to me, given that she felt I was in her space.
I think one of the most recent incidents that happened, which I thought was really deep, so I was at the gym and I was in the bathroom and I walked in after this woman, this Asian American, well, I don't know if she was Asian American, but this Asian woman, and she saw me and she sort of gasped and she said, and I could see like the fear in her eyes, and so, but she just completely ran to the stall and I could hear her locking the door, like she thought I was coming in there to rape her or do something like that. And I think that was really illuminating because it shows like, why are we taught to fear men in our society? There's something, not that she shouldn't be afraid if a man did come into the bathroom, but well, maybe she shouldn't. You know, why is it that that's our first inclination, is like, oh my God, there's a man in here, rape or something like violent. So there's a way in which like that's a very real, you know, threat, because things like that have happened and could happen. So you want to be aware and smart, but I think there's something we need to interrogate in our society, that we teach everyone to be afraid of men, right? Our masculinity, and think about what does that do in terms of how does that structure power hierarchies or patriarchy? How does that help to keep patriarchy in its place? If we're teaching people you have to be afraid of men, then how would we, I don't know, how do you undo that?
One time I was in the bathroom and a little girl was in there, and she said, "Mommy, a girl boy's in here," or something like that. And her mom was like, "No, that's a man." And her mom just rushed her out, you know what I mean? And I feel like her mom knew I was a woman, but she didn't want her to have that confusion. She just wanted to know, this is how men look, this is how women look. And I think when kids ask that, you just have to be honest with them. And the fact that they're questioning it shows so much more than even adults have. Because we'll assume in a minute. We don't even ask the question, but kids are still learning so much.
I think the most interesting interactions I've had based on my dress would be working with kids, actually. The kids don't, you know, the tongue is real loose with the kids. They just say whatever. So whenever I would go to a school, I would be subbing for like program leaders for an after-school program. And so I would always have a kid at every new school that I went to that would ask me, you know, if I was a boy or a girl. And I would always just ask them, well, what do you think? And some would say a girl, or I had one girl who was maybe a little bit sharper than the others who was like both. And I was like, oh, check you out. But yeah, more from them. You know, I feel like adults, you know, we have this idea of decorum.
Interactions with children are interesting. I had this moment where I was at some party and there's a little boy there, and you know, he just kept looking at me, trying to figure me out, and then eventually he came up to me and he said, "So, are you a boy or a girl?" And I was like, you know, both. And he said, "Oh, can I see?" And I was like, "Can you see?" And so he was like, no, I want to see what's under your hat." And so he wanted to see my hair, and so I took off my hat, and he was like, "Oh, you're a boy, okay." And so it's interesting how in a child's world or child's mind, the way that they were constructing gender didn't necessarily have to do with what's between your legs, but it's sometimes what's on your head or what's on your feet.
A lot of kids call me Mr. J, and I don't really correct them anymore. I stopped doing it probably in like the third or fourth week, because I'm not offended and they know who I am. I think what's important to me is that they learn. Obviously, being this person that I am who can confuse people, especially little kids, I didn't want to, you know, brainwash them, but I wanted to, like, you know, alter their understanding of gender enough that they would see that you don't have to wear heels, you don't have to do all these things, you know, that kids are taught that they have to do. And so it was really funny because today's my second to last day in kindergarten. So I have one more day, and today one girl said bye to me and hugged me, and she said to her classmate, "She's our daddy." I was like, I was like, what? She's like, you're her daddy. I was like, no, I'm not. She's like, yes, you are. And I was like, but I'm a girl. She's like, no, you're her daddy.
I always played with the dudes. I always was picked to be like football team captain. Like the dudes knew, like they recognized that, you know. Even though they knew something was off, like I would walk, you know how they had the boys line and the girls line? So I would always stay in the back of the girls line, so in the middle. Because from all the other classes, if they saw me walking in the girls line, they would be like, why is that guy in the girls? Because it was such a visual, like, okay, that's not right. Like, all the girls are in these pastels, and then there's this dude at the back, very much like boy, you know. Like now the kids kind of look like all sorts of different genders, but like back then it was like you're either this or that, you know.
And I had a little brother that was 8 years younger than me, and I remember making this really conscious decision to teach him things that he should know. Like I taught him how to tie a shoe, and I would teach him how to play football. I taught him how to like play basketball, throw the frisbee, fly a kite. Like we did a lot of things together, and I was very much in that role of like, all right, I'm gonna show you how to do this. I'm gonna show you how to do this. And I remember once my brother said to me, he was like, "You're the best brother sister anybody could ever have." I must have been like 13 or something. He was 5, something like that. And I didn't have a consciousness around that. I wasn't like, my gender wasn't a conversation I had with myself so clearly at that age. But I remember like smiling, like, what did you say? He was like, you're the best brother, sister anybody could have. And I was just like, okay, you know. And I felt like I had been seen by him, and I think we continue to have a relationship where we're really able to see each other. I identify as being, okay, in my heart, I always will say that I'm gay, because I feel like that's the word that I grew up with. But gay to me was like how queer was, maybe minus the more political, critical thinking around what it is to be queer. What I say about my life as an artist is that I'm queer and I'm trans. And I'm not saying that there's one over the other, but I always say them kind of together. I identify with the words stud and boy, and what else can I say? I do go by male pronouns. I've had top surgery. Transitioning has been an issue that I've had to sort of like visit and revisit based off of things that are going on in my career, because most of my work is character work and in the theater and acting, and I think that what I can do as a gender non-conforming body is challenge. So I want to spend the rest of my life on this planet challenging what people view as an acting body. That's not to say that I might just not want to make that sort of decision, you know, like if I revisit that I want to still make the decision to not transition with hormones. I could, you know, but I'm not, there's no like final destination that I have to get to. My trans is just moving. You know, I'm reluctant because I feel like it can be so often defined by like these masculine, feminine, like what are these things? I don't even know what these things are. But I guess for me, I feel open to expressing myself in the ways that make sense at any given particular moment in my life. And sometimes I feel masculine, sometimes I feel feminine, sometimes I don't feel either one of those things. Sometimes I feel a whole bunch of things at once.
To think about you having trouble, like
it's hard.
figuring out what to say and what does that mean, like for you, but for other people when they're asking you to sort of define yourself. What it produces a certain kind of anxiety.
It does, and it's partly because people. What I anticipate sometimes is a response of like, you're confused, or you got to make up your mind, or you're not authentically this or that. Do you know what I mean? I'm anticipating these responses. They may or may not come, but I'm fearful that if I say something, I'm going to have to live up to it. And I never do. You know what I mean? I never do. It's not the truth of it. So I think now at this moment, I resist a lot of labels because none of them have been true for me so far. Like, absolutely true. And there was no way when I was taking testosterone that I'd be at the grocery store that people would see me as female. And I remember before I took it, I would kind of play this game where I knew what I could do to make people see me as male, and I knew what I could do to make people see me as female. And I knew when people were confused how to put them at ease, like how to be like, no, you're right, I'm actually this.
I identify as female. The pronoun to use would be she. But I also identify as gender nonconforming because my gender identity is female, but my gender expression is male or masculine. So I'm very clear about how I express myself, which is very different from female. I don't, most of my clothes are men's clothes. I have men's shoes, if they're the right size. The only female thing that I have would be underwear. And so that's like a bra or sports bra. That's more like a sports bra. And then underwear would be male or female. But the female underwear would be sort of like women's jockeys that look like men's briefs, So it's kind of still male looking, but it's for women. And so I kind of mix that up a little bit.
I identify as a Black American BOI boy, transgender, trans man, queer, Black feminist, woman of color. I like to embrace all of these different things. Though it's difficult for a lot of people to accept the multiplicity of identities, I think. So trans for me is not about necessarily I'm going to become a man, and when I do that, everything will be all good because I will walk in the world, everybody will see me and know me, and I will take my place in this like patriarchal, masculine society. That's actually not, and that's not what I'm interested in. So I'm interested in being comfortable in my own skin, but I'm also interested in, dismantling and fighting patriarchy. And I think I started probably just within the last year wearing a binder. And that for me has been like really emancipatory, which is so funny because it's like a contradiction. To cover up, to strap down is a way that I feel more free. And but I think it's like a beautiful contradiction, and at some point I would like to have top surgery just because it is something that I feel would be more freeing than the experience of binding, just to be and not have to deal with my breasts. And it's not necessarily that I have a relationship where it's like I hate my breasts, because that's what I've come to learn about your body, is that it's that I need to love it. Even if I might change it, there's something about being in it, loving it, what you have, and working with what you have. And not in a way it's like, oh my God, I hate my breasts. Because I don't hate any part of myself, but I know that is something that I would like to change.
I identify, and the way I self-identify changes. But right now in this moment, I identify as a queer person of color, a queer trans person of color, kind of trans person of color. I'm non-medically transitioned trans, and sometimes I feel not trans enough. I'm also masculine of center. Sometimes if I say trans or if I say butch, people end up assuming that I can't be both.
So you identify yourself as a tomboy?
No, not so much.
What would you say?
That is a curious question. Wow, gender identification is even a curious thing now. I guess if I look at some of the terms that are out there, the broad masculine of center, maybe androgynous, or I don't really get into trying to necessarily fit into one box or to say that I'm this or that. Like if someone asked me, like you did, I'd be like, oh, okay, well let's, what are our choices to pick from, if I had to?
I identify myself as a dominant lesbian woman. It was like this whole form of being an educated, dominant woman. You know what I mean? Getting educated daily, and not just on schoolwork, but on yourself, on your health, on your body as a woman, and not being afraid to express that you are a woman and still being dominant in that sense. So I would call myself a dominant lesbian woman.
Eventually took a leadership role in the Black and queer group on campus at Stanford, which I think helped in my development a lot. So as far as my identity, I still don't really do the label thing, but my name is J. Marie. And I wrote about this in my play, but J is kind of masculine and Marie is kind of more feminine. And I think I kind of hold that balance.
I've been out as trans for almost 10 years now. And, have spent actually a lot of time in my academic life as well, kind of thinking about these ideas. Particularly thinking about like what does transition look like and what does transition mean for trans men. Resisting a kind of medicalized narrative to talk about what transgender subjectivity and transsexuality more specifically. Before I had top surgery, I was like, I'm just as much a trans man as I am having had it. Transgender as a term is typically used as an umbrella term to capture a number of different positionalities, subjectivities. So it can include people who are genderqueer or people who are transsexual, which is often considered to be a kind of medicalized move from male to female or from female to male, sometimes abbreviated as MTF or FTM. It can also refer to cross-dressers or to people who feel like they are both genders or neither. Transgender, as I've experienced it, has been more about a trajectory of being accepted as socially as a trans man. And for me, it's important to always have trans and man together. At the same time, I've had struggles with the term transgender is because I felt like there was some sort of external pressure or general sentiment that like proving yourself as transgender also required a certain kind of entry to medicalized sites that I A, didn't have money for, and B, wasn't sure about.
I think about TV and I'm like, wait, what's the closest thing that looks to me? And I've decided it's Shrek. But Shrek can get away with things that I can get away with. Shrek could go up to a girl in a bar and say, I come with a big ass, and if you're interested, I could bring my Puss in Boots. But everybody loves Shrek, and nobody loves me. Everybody thinks I'm a black guy.
I went on the road trip exclusively to men's restrooms because I didn't want to. Everybody's getting out of their cars and going to the bathrooms, and I didn't want, as a black person, in a lot of these places, I didn't want to be like seen going into the bathroom. Their girlfriends would be going into the bathrooms, and then I come in after. I don't know what kind of hell is gonna break loose. You know what I mean? Like being perceived as a black man going into the women's restroom. I think I was in West Texas. And I went to the men's restroom, and this little white boy was like, had this whole reaction to me in the bathroom. And I just like booked it to the stall and went to the bathroom. And he left out, and I was like, oh God, he's gonna tell his parents that there's a woman in the men's restroom. And then I was like, or maybe he's scared because he hasn't seen a black man.
The worst incidents I have been through are from intoxicated young white men. Those are the most dangerous situations I've been in. And I definitely have chosen to handle them in different ways. Sometimes I respond. Sometimes I have a conversation with them. Sometimes I have to walk away because of the safety of who I'm with and myself. And so, you know, this other incident was I was at a conference, LGBT conference, and these drunk white people were outside the hotel and said, are you at the gay conference? Wait, hold on. Are you at the gay conference? Wait, can you open your eyes wider? And so there you have an incident that you can't just pinpoint as like, oh, that was a that was racist, you know, or that was homophobic, because it's simultaneous. These oppressions are, you know, you're who you are at all times. You're both. It's not like you deal with racism on Monday, homophobia on Tuesday, transphobia on Wednesday, and whatever, you know, on different days of the week. It's happening all at once because they're reading you in a certain way as like a gender ambiguous, you know, racialized being, you know, and they're going to treat you according to whatever stereotypes and things that they've been seeing in the media. And gay Asian men are not perceived in a positive light in the media. Straight Asian men are not seen in a positive light in the media. We're not seen as masculine. We're not seen as, you know, attractive. We're seen as like the nerd or the martial arts, you know, person with an accent that's funny or a joke or some racist caricature. Not like some, you know, we're just not seen in a positive light. So the way we're treated in day-to-day life is gonna be affected by the very few interactions they have with us, which is through the media.
What's really interesting is the gym locker room too, because I've had, and that's a space where I just feel so vulnerable because I have to take my clothes off. When I'm in that space and my clothes are off, I can't tell you the number of times people have just stared at me, just like openly stared without shame, just to like, what are you, stare. And I'm there, you know, putting on my drawers or socks or something, you know what I mean? And trying to mind my own business. Like I always, in my locker room, I'm straight ahead. I stare into my locker because I don't want anybody to get the mix up that I'm looking at them and make them uncomfortable. But I've had women just like come up to me and like, occasionally a nice comment, you know, like, oh, you're very strong. You know what I mean? But a lot of times it just feels like scientific.
I think that living in this body has sometimes meant like creating a mental checklist of like the places where I would prefer to go because they have the kind of restroom facilities that I would prefer or need. You know, I guess it was like 2004, I tried to start a bathrooms project in New York, which is where I was living at the time. And I wanted to do kind of work with people who were like family restrooms for people who are differently abled, restrooms for trans people, and specifically starting with restaurants and businesses and local communities, especially when they were single stall, to like say like, why would you need to do this kind of form of gender binaristic, gender separated restrooms, right? Where there are all these communities who are coming into your establishment and who would feel much more comfortable if you just made it the public toilet.
Every civil rights movement has had a bathroom issue. And I'm just saying that the bathroom is, people just gotta pee. I mean, think about how many times you pee a day. You need to use the bathroom a day. That's the same amount of times I need to use it a day. And I have the right to not be harassed and stared at, or have this fear of being harassed and stared at every time I go in. I have the right to just use it the way I always used to use it. Like when I had long hair and was like the cute Asian girl, there should be a sign on the bathroom that says toilet. And if it is, one thing people can do is work to put signage up that says this bathroom is for women and transgender people, or men and transgender people, and this is what that means, and this is what that looks like. This is like more information on what that means. Put a little piece of paper over the bathroom and say why you're designating that bathroom as a mixed gender bathroom. It matters to people and it makes a difference. And maybe you won't get it right the first time, but it's worth it to that one person, you know, who has a lot of bathroom traumas. I know there's a lot more than bathrooms to us and what we go through, but it's just a very, you know, people don't even think twice about the bathroom being an issue. So it's something to highlight, to say like it's a big privilege if you never have to think about it.
All right, how y'all doing? Y'all good? Feeling good? All the ladies looking good tonight.
I don't talk like that. I know I sound like Mickey Mouse. I know some of y'all who don't know me are thinking, wait, is that a girl who looks like a man? Or a boy who looks better than my man?